Welcome back to the History Hound Presents. My name is Richard McLeod, and today I think we have a pretty interesting topic for our presentation. I want to talk about characters of Newmarket. Now, I'm sure many of you are thinking, what does he mean by characters? And we'll get into that in a few minutes, but one of the things that I wanted to mention right off the top is that for those who have attended my presentations through the years, or have read my articles, or probably even just talked to me, you'll know that I consider the people element of history much more important than the actual events or the buildings that we tend to look at. I might add that my mentor, who is my Uncle George Loosby, thought very differently. He loved the buildings, and that's probably the reason why he spent most of his life sketching all of the buildings around Newmarket so that he could save them, doing sketches that would bring out the character of the buildings. But all along, he and I used to sort of disagree. You know, I said that I didn't really care as much about the buildings. I cared more about the people who were in the buildings. I didn't care as much about the events as the people who took part in the events, and learning more about them and what made them tick. So this is what brought me to do this presentation today. I want to take a look at the characters of Newmarket, take a look at the people who I would suggest our entire community and what we have today is built upon. So hopefully at the end of this presentation, I'll be able to at least identify a few people that I think were instrumental in our history. Now, the people that were chosen to highlight, and I'm going to be taking a look at the top 5 from a survey that I did in 2014-2015. The survey was done with a form. I didn't use an online poll to do it, and it was very well responded to. As I say, the idea was that I would have people identify those who they thought were worthy of inclusion on a list of the who's who of Newmarket. And as I say, in 2014-2015, we had a lot of people respond to the poll, and this presentation that we're doing today will highlight some of their choices. Of course, because of time restraints, I'll just take a look at the top 5 as far as the vote getters, but for those people who are interested in the entire list, I have posted the list online on my Facebook group in the past, and I can certainly do that again so that people can get an idea of all the people who were nominated. In some cases, we have little write-ups that were done about why they were considered characters of Newmarket. So, not to despair. If your favorite person isn't one of the 5 that were identified back in 2014-2015, then you can rest assured there is a listing of all the people who were nominated. I mentioned that I wanted to update this list, and so I thought it would be fun to put an online poll on my Facebook page, and so you can go there for the next 3 weeks and vote. As I say, it's the History Hound group on Facebook. I'm hoping that we are going to be able to attract a lot of people to vote. Be interesting to see what has changed in the last 5 or 6 years. Whether attitudes have changed, if the same people who were towards the top of the list are still at the top of the list, or whether, as I suspect, people's choices change as we get a younger demographic who are voting. Unfortunately, a lot of those great people from our past are sadly forgotten. That's one of the reasons why. One of the passions of my life is the oral history project, where we are able to sit people down and either record them via video, or we will do an audio recording, and we try to capture the essence of who they are and their Newmarket and changes that they've seen, and a little bit about what they feel they have contributed to the town over the years. As I said, our focus is the top 5 characters of the town of Newmarket. We actually had 118 potential candidates to choose from. What we did was, what I did, I should say, I received 118 separate nominations for people who were deemed to be worthy of being called characters of Newmarket. And I just simply took the number of people who garnished the most, or garnered, I should say, the most votes. I think there might be a few surprises as we go along as to the people who were nominated. One of the reasons why I wanted to do this new poll is to see whether that was just a picture in time, and whether it will change. So that hopefully, if people go to the Facebook page and do the poll, we'll get an idea of how much has changed, if anything has changed at all in people's attitudes. So hopefully you'll get out or get over there to the group and vote. So from September of 2014 to April of 2015, a total of 568 people nominated their top candidates to be on the list of memorable characters of Newmarket. And again, this presentation, while it's only going to talk about the 5 top persons on that list, there were some extremely worthy people who were nominated. There were people who were nominated that I had never heard of before. And so I was able to learn quite a bit about our history, learn about some pretty impressive people from our past. And when we came out with the list shortly after the nominations closed in April of 2015, I gave people, all you people out there, an opportunity to take a look at the nominations. And I know people would come up to me and say, boy, I had never heard of this person, but this person is absolutely fascinating. So that was my goal, basically, to get people to put their thinking cap on, think about the people that they've met through their life, people that their parents or their grandparents talked about, and sort of bring these people back to the fore, because, as I say, without the people of the past, the rest of it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter if we still have a post office or we still have a town hall. It wouldn't matter about the events that took place here. What would matter is the fact that our relatives, our family, our friends, our community did some extraordinary things over the years, and they should be recognized for that. So let's take a look at definition of character, and then I'll tell you what my definition of character is, which is sort of a combination of a number of these things. So character is the way someone thinks, feels, or behaves, essentially somebody's personality. It's a set of qualities that are shared by many people in the group who perhaps follow these people, who follow these people's examples, and that can be narrowed down to just a group within our society, or to, the region, the whole region. So it's a set of qualities that make a person, place, or a thing different from other people, places, or things. And it's this third area that I kind of find is my definition for this title of Characters of Newmarket. I'm looking for people, not necessarily famous people, people who made living in Newmarket, growing up in Newmarket, calling Newmarket home, different. People who made a difference. So that person may have been the mayor of Newmarket, may have invented things, may have been, a society person, or they might have been that person who rode the buses in Newmarket and was particularly gregarious. Everybody knew them. I'm always impressed with people that everybody knows. I always think that is such a wonderful trait to have. So this is sort of my definition of what a character of Newmarket would be. It may not be your definition, so whatever your definition is, that's fine. If you take a look at the people who have been nominated already on my Facebook page, you'll see that there are people who are renowned, people who, filled the papers and the newswires for years and years. But you'll also see people who probably were less known throughout the province or the country, but locally, everybody knew them. Everybody, when you mention these people's names, people would go, "Oh yeah, no, I remember him," and they would have a story about them, something they did, something they said. So that's, I think, also a valuable group of people that we need to capture as well. I started this presentation by talking about why it's important for us to honor people, and particularly the characters of Newmarket. History is made up of people, places, and events that have shaped our present and will continue to shape our future. Most important of these, in my opinion, is the people element. These people are the people who created and populated the buildings that we now have begun to worship. And they're the ones who made the historical events happen because of their interaction with other people, with the events of the day, with their beliefs and their belief system. And for those people who have been following what I do over these many, many years, you'll know that I've always given preference to an examination of local history from the element of the people who have made up this community over the years, since our people first came here back in the early 1800s. And the people, my goal is to highlight the people who have made Newmarket the place that I love, the place that I think is exciting and vibrant, and I think we still have a lot of those people still with us today, and it's important that we capture their story. It's important that we thank them, and it's important that we encourage them to move us forward in the future, in whatever direction that may be. So today I'm going to try and spend about 45 minutes going over the 5 characters of Newmarket. I'll try and explain to you who they were and why I think they were chosen. Of course, this is completely subjective by the people who took part in this. As I said, I simply tallied up the people who got the most votes, and those people became the top 5 vote-getters, and so therefore the top 5 characters of Newmarket. As part of this project back in 2014 and 2015, I created a journal, as I said, which I named the Who's Who of Newmarket's Past. And it's kind of interesting because of the fact that there are people of you know, of every ilk, everything from Sir William Mulock to the guy who was a crossing guard for 25 years at Stuart Scott School. I would argue both of them just as important to our history. Both of them have been captured in people's hearts, and both of those types of people are just as important to our community and our society as any other. And what I hope to do is, and what I hope back then, and I still hope to do, is to encourage all of you out there to put pen to paper and sort of flesh out a list of people who you think warrant being included on the characters of Newmarket. Now, they might be family members, they might be friends, they might have been neighbors, people who grew up on your street, they might have been people who you read about, or your parents or your grandparents told you all about them, and alas, they may have been forgotten. Well, this is our opportunity to bring them back to the forefront of our attention and to recapture a little bit of our history. And it was important for me to capture all of this for posterity. For those people who have listened to my presentations or read my articles, you know that one of my greatest fears is that at some point people will just give up recording the history of Newmarket, and these dear people will be lost to our memory. I think that would be extremely sad, and this is the reason why I do what I do. I was a little bit surprised, but the top vote getter back in 2014, 2015 was Evelyn Denny. Most people know her as Ms. Denny. What's interesting about Ms. Denny is that she actually taught my grandmother, my mother, my uncles, and me. So she taught for a long, long time, and everybody has a story. I don't think any person that was on the list from 2014, 2015 elicited so much emotion when the people wrote why they picked her. And it was really evenly divided. There were people who said that Miss Denny was the best teacher they ever had, that she had changed their life forever, that she had changed their love of learning, and particularly Canadian history, which was her passion. And likewise, a lot of people, while they nominated her for a outstanding character of Newmarket, didn't have quite as many warm memories of Evelyn Denny. Perhaps she scared them. Perhaps she was far from their favorite teacher that they ever had in their life. But she was remarkable. There's no doubt about that. Anybody who can teach for the number of years that she taught and can keep order in a classroom like no one else I've ever seen, I think she deserves to be on the list. So she was number one. She was the top vote getter. Back in 2014, 2015, the interesting thing about her was that just like now, we gave people a choice of, they could pick 5 people. And the amazing thing about Miss Denny was she was on most people's ballot. While people would pick other people for their 2nd through 5th choice, so many people picked Miss Denny as their number 1 choice. Hence, she got so many votes to be the top character. This picture that you see here was taken at Popper Bank School, taken in 1923. She was, in fact, a teacher at the school. She had become a teacher simply because the teacher that they had left, and I guess the people who were running education in the area came to her and said, "You're 17 years of age. How would you like to be a teacher?" As you know, back then, the school was made up of many, many grades all together. She's lucky that she was one of the older students there, and she took on the mantle, I guess, of being a teacher. And she didn't look back. I mean, she taught there from, as I say, 1923 all the way forward into the to the 1970s. So, and she taught at a number of schools. She had a number of positions within schools. Some of you may remember her for choral reading groups. I was in one of her choral reading groups, and I was terrified to make a mistake. And we finally settled on the best option, which was that I would stand at the back, since I, at that time, was one of the taller people. I would stand at the back, I would mouth the words, but as she used to say, "Dear God, don't say a word, just fake it." Winning was very important to her. And of course, she passed in 1980. One of the things that a lot of people don't know about Evelyn Denny was that she came from a famous family. Her father was Vincent Denny, who owned a number of businesses around Newmarket. He's had streets and a school named after him. So she knew a great deal about our history. Her family went back quite a ways in our history. And when you got her on the topic of local history, her eyes would light up. She just loved local history. So, and this is one of the things that I got from Miss Denny. Now, I had I guess you'd say, the opportunity to get to know Miss Denny outside of school, because she just lived a few doors down from me on Queen Street when I was growing up. And she would often, as I was going by, she'd call me over and she'd give me some encouragement. I always wanted to be a teacher. Sadly, I gave up teaching and went into business, but I always wanted to be a teacher. And I was always intrigued with how she did what she did, because she wasn't a big lady, and yet she commanded a class, including a lot of very belligerent young men, and essentially had no problems in doing so. So there had to be something special, and I was always interested in finding out what it was that made her tick. Jerry Carter, who most people know, I think, is sort of the king of local history, described her as a short, rotund, and very strict woman with a fondness for blackboard chalk. Miss Denny was and will remain a legend in the Newmarket school system. She served over 40 years teaching in York County. For those people who are interested, the school board has a museum in Richmond Hill, and the last time that I checked, they still had her pointer with a little plaque down there in recognition of the fact that she was renowned through the entire region for not only teaching for a long time, but being a different type of teacher. I'm not so sure today she could do the things that she did back then. Corporal punishment, of course, doesn't exist anymore. Back then, if you didn't listen, if you talked back, you'd get a swat with either the ruler or the pointer. I've had that happen to me, and couldn't do that now. And you couldn't yell at people. So it's a different time. You probably will never see another Miss Denny. Her classes were what I like to call hyper-disciplined. So in other words, she was the boss. There was no doubt to anybody in that room that she was the boss. There was actually no doubt in the minds of the parents who had children in her class that she was in charge. And all she really asked for is that you were dedicated to your studies. She thought, and I can only go by what she used to say to me. She used to say to me that I could be so much more than I was, and if I would only apply myself. She also would be quite open. She had mentioned that she had taught both my cousins and my uncles, and had indicated that she certainly hoped that I was more dedicated to studies than they were, which was kind of eerie because she remembered back so far that she could identify what your parents were like as students. As I say, she was nominated to teach her classmates at the age of 17, and that is how she developed her style, which I think most people who had her would call unique. I remember asking her once why she was as mean as she was, and she said, listen, if you're 17 years of age, you've got students in your class that may be a year or two younger than you are, mostly boys, and she explained the whole dynamics of boys going to school and girls in her time not going as much to school later in the classes or later in the grades. And she said, I realized that I had to be in total control. I had to put a little bit of fear in these people's hearts. So that is the reason why, at least this is the reason she told me, she created the style that she did. I can honestly say if her desire was to create fear in the hearts of her students, she certainly did that. Number 2 on the list from 2014-2015 was Max Bogue. Max Bogue is known for a couple of things. For your parents and grandparents, they probably remember Max Bogue and the Max Bogue Orchestra. He was a local musician, primarily the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Played all through the region. Before I had to buckle down and do some research on Max Bogue, I knew of Max Bogue. My mother talked about Max Bogue. I never really realized how truly famous Max Bogue was across the country and around the world. Max Bogue was an excellent musician. Now, there were a lot of excellent musicians locally at that time. Art West, there were a large number of bands, but I think the Max Bogue band was probably the best known. Max Bogue took a love for Canadian music. The interesting thing about him was that he decided that he needed to step forward and publicize Canadian talent, and so he set up a recording studio in his basement. He lived on Avenue Road, and he set up a recording studio in his basement to record Canadian acts, and in a few minutes we'll get into a little more about that. As I say, he had a dance band that traveled all through central Ontario. In 1948, he established Tip Top Recording Company here in Newmarket to record Canadian talent. We had one other record company called the Monarch Recording Company, also here in Newmarket. But Tip Top Recording was one of the very first Canadian labels. And it was dedicated solely to Canadian talent. So that made him, I think, a little bit special. I referred to the fact that when I started to do research on Max Bogue, I had put a post on a blog, and a lady had responded from Australia telling me that she was in charge of the Max Bogue Australian Hall of Fame. Which I thought was kind of interesting, and she told me all kinds of things about Max Bogue that I didn't know. She drew my attention to the fact that he and his band recorded what they call, I guess, dance music or rink music, and they became famous for that. Many of you who went skating in the 50s and early 60s probably would have skated to Max Bogue's recordings. for skating music. That shows you how well known that music was. He stayed involved in music until his death in 1980. In one of my oral history interviews, I spoke to a lady who lived near Max Bogue, and she said that the highlight of her time living on Avenue Road was watching all of the celebrities arrive by car to his house to go in and record. She mentioned, Juliet. I don't know how many people remember Juliet. She mentioned Tommy Hunter, Wayne and Schuster. There was a whole list of people that she said, appeared at his home and would record in his home. So I think that's kind of cool. A lot of people aren't aware that during the Second World War, Lorne Greene was stationed here in Newmarket, and as well as, of course, doing the news for CBC News. And the deal that he had was that he could either take the car and driver and go down to CBC to record, or if he wanted to, he could record here in Newmarket. In one of the presentations that I've done several times, not only here but also in Toronto, that I titled Entertainment in Newmarket, we cover several of the documentaries that he became famous for during the Second World War. And what's interesting is at the end of the recording, it says that it was recorded in Max Bogue's basement here in Newmarket, which I think is really cool. Max Bogue, as I said, had a number of careers. Second thing that he did was he was a land developer and an entrepreneur. As you can see, starting your own record label is certainly pegs you, I think, as an entrepreneur. But Max Bogue, along with Charles Boyd, developed the lands laying to the west of Lorne Avenue between Millard and Eagle Street, and many of the streets in that area are named after either Mr. Boyd or Mr. Bogue's family. So I don't think he probably wanted for money. He was busy developing those areas. He saw the need for additional land, and he was able to snap it up and was able to build the subdivisions that we now have, as I say, west of Lorne between Millard and Eagle Street. This is just sort of a little montage of the things that he was involved with. The top corner here we have one of the ads for a May dance he did at Stouffville High School. And in the top right, you see the label, Tip Top Records. This is from his record company. The picture in the middle, the reason why that's there is that I think he first became even more famous during the Second World War. He created Club 14 on Millard. His band was the house band there. This is where the local people would go of an evening for entertainment and would meet up with the local soldiers who were, of course, at the military camp. Apparently it was a roaring success. My mother was a volunteer there serving food to the people that came, including the soldiers. And she said that it was so well run and it was a real highlight of the town, at the time. And I guess his orchestra was very, very good. He also, it might be worth mentioning, would often work with the other bands to put on shows. If he would loan people from his band to other bands, and he in turn would take people from other local bands into his band for guest appearances. So, he did a great deal for the music scene, not only here in Newmarket, but all across Canada. The next person that was garnered a lot of votes was Maisa de la Roche. She was the only child of William Roche and Alberta Lundy. Roche, you notice the word Lundy. This isn't a fix. She is a relative of mine, but that isn't the reason why she's on the list. Maisa de la Roche became famous for her works of fiction. She wrote novels and plays. She grew up here in Newmarket, born and raised in Newmarket. She lived over on the corner of Water Street and Prospect Street. The house is still there. It overlooks Ferry Lake, and it overlooks a cairn that if you're interested, you can go down to Ferry Lake when you're able to go out and walk about. There's a cairn there which pays tribute to Maisa de la Roche. She also was a relative of David Wilson from the Sharon Temple fame. And as I say, she was my grandmother's second cousin. I understand she was a little bit of, and again, I'm going to go into things that my grandmother told me when I was a little boy, and luckily enough, I wrote down because I was absolutely fascinated by Maisa de la Roche. My grandmother said that she was kind of a lonely little girl when she was little. She was different. She was, there's no doubt about that. In today's jargon, we would call her a different little child. Different, certainly different for the times. First of all, she was somebody who didn't really follow societal norms. She was very early in her life. She came out as being gay or a lesbian, and she never hid that fact. She was openly in a lesbian relationship. She also was an early feminist. She became famous for her debates that she used to have with another famous Canadian writer, Stephen Leacock. They traveled all across Canada, the two of them, debating. And even though he was a humorist and had an extremely quick wit, in most cases she got the better of him. He would become completely frustrated with her because, of course, she was so much different than I guess other women of her time. In a few seconds, I'll tell you a couple of anecdotes from their debates. Many of you probably grew up reading her short stories. You probably would have read Jelna or the White Oaks series that was published, and I certainly was able to read it when I went to school. I hope they still read it in schools today. You probably will remember that back in the 60s and early 70s, CBC turned it into a mini-series, and so I think a lot of people were exposed to her very different writing through the series. The great thing about her stories is that her stories were all about what she liked to call rural aristocracy. And they were written kind of tongue-in-cheek. The really interesting, I guess you'd say, thing about her characters and her settings was that because she had grown up in Newmarket, in several interviews and also in conversations that she had with my grandmother, she would point out the characters in her plays that were actually modeled after people here in Newmarket. Situations, events, and families that were Newmarket families, which she apparently found very humorous growing up. So I say she was born here in Newmarket in 1879, and she died in 1961 in Toronto. As I was saying earlier, she was very well known for the debates that she had with Stephen Leacock. Stephen Leacock was renowned for being a male chauvinist. I think that's what they called it in my generation. I'm not sure what they call it now. And she was, of course, a feminist. He also, being a religious gentleman, didn't have much time for her because, as I said, she was very outward with her sexuality, and the two, I guess, just simply didn't like each other. So as a publicity stunt, I think it probably started as a publicity stunt, and then he discovered that their dislike was real. They would debate, and invariably, whatever topic would come up, Leacock would often say, well, you know, I know you write, but women don't really write. Women aren't very good writers. You know, there aren't any really good writers from history. To which Ms. de la Roche would take him to task, and the two of them would get sidetracked from talking literature and would really talk about politics and social norms. Stephen Leacock was famous for needling her on the fact that she was unmarried, saying that she probably was unmarried because she was a most unfit woman. No man would ever want to be with her. I think the headline in the Toronto Star quotes her as saying in response to this, to Stephen Leacock, she said, well, very early in my life, I decided that I wanted to be a lesbian. More because I took a look, or my choice was made easier because I took a look at the men that were around me, and I realized that there was nothing at all appealing about them. And I certainly didn't need a man in my life in order to be successful. He would often retort that that men obviously had their uses in life, and to the shock of the prim and proper people of Newmarket and Toronto, she'd retort that any use that a man may have was not insurmountable, because she always could find some way to make up for the lack of a man in her life. So she was quite a character. My grandmother, well, my grandmother was a Quaker. If you've listened to other presentations I've done, I've always mentioned that my grandmother was a Quaker. So I think she was probably shocked at Maison de la Roche and the things that she would say and the things she would do. Although they did have one thing in common. My grandmother was a suffragette. She marched with the signs, you know, for the vote and for equal opportunity. So I think they had that in common. But I also think secretly, in talking to my grandmother, that she, deep in her heart, you know, kind of loved the fact that Maison de la Roche was her own person. She always made it clear where she came from. She always came to what was at one time a annual event at the Sharon Temple, which was the gathering of the Lundy clan. And I want to tell you, I guess that was quite a gathering. The Lundys intermarried with most of the families locally. So, you know, I always joke when people say to me, oh, you're a Lundy, maybe you're related to me. I usually say, probably. I seem to be related to everybody. So she would come up to the picnic, and even when she was a famous writer, she would come up here and would indulge in you know, all the excitement of a local country picnic. And everybody kind of joked. I know my grandmother used to say that everybody's hope was that she would find them a unique character and would put them in her next novel or her next play. The next gentleman was famous for his hockey exploits. Herbert James Kane, or Herb Kane, better known I guess as Herb Kane, was a hockey player from Newmarket. Born here, he played professional hockey for 13 years in the National Hockey League. He played for Montreal Maroons, for Montreal Canadiens, and is probably more better known for his time with the Boston Bruins. If you happen to go to Boston Garden, you will see a banner hanging there for Herb Cain. Herb Cain was an excellent hockey player, and I think probably always excelled in hockey. Some people will probably remember Herb Cain for being part of the Redmen teams that we had here in Newmarket. One of the years, probably if you follow me on Facebook, you know that one of the years in 1933, Newmarket won the Memorial Cup, emblematic of the best junior hockey team in Canada, and he was one of the players on that team. So he really excelled in hockey. One of the things that I admire about him is that after he retired, he returned to Newmarket and he coached hockey here in Newmarket. And I might add, his hockey teams here in Newmarket had a great deal of success. And the final person who was on the list back in 2014, 2015, I think some of it was because he had died not too long before. Partly, I think, because people were trying to appease me. This is my Uncle George Lousby. I do think that he was worthy of being on the list. I'm not so sure he was worthy to be in the top 5. He certainly is number 1 or number 2 in my life, but whether he's should be number 5 overall, I don't know, but I'll leave that up to you. You know, he served as the past president of the Newmarket Historical Society. He also served as the chairman of LACACT, which was the precursor to Heritage Newmarket. He wrote several books about history of Newmarket, and many of these you can still purchase from Heritage Newmarket or from the Ellen Campbell Museum. An excellent read and excellent background on the early days of Newmarket. He decided that he would strike out on his own. My grandfather owned a monument shop on Main Street called Lousby Memorial, and I think my grandfather would like my Uncle George to have followed in his footsteps, but my Uncle George fits the criteria, I think, of being a character of Newmarket in that he had a very strong will, to put it mildly. He decided that he had an interest in architecture and engineering, and that he had a gift for drawing and architecture, and so he decided that this is what he would do. His first job was here in Newmarket, working for Office Specialty. He eventually went to school to become an engineer in Toronto, and he got a job working for de Havilland. At de Havilland, he designed the planes for Hockey Sydney, and during the Second World War, he continued to design Hockey Sydney's military class aircraft. His specialty were wings. I always got a laugh when he told me that, but when he explained why that was very important, I stopped laughing. He was instrumental in the creation of the STOL aircraft, the short takeoff and landing aircraft. One of the things that are unique about that airplane are the wings, which my Uncle George designed, or helped to design. I shouldn't say give him all the credit, but he helped to design. He had he played enough of a part in it that he was paid an enormous amount of money over the years as residuals from his invention. So that was one of the things that he was known for. A lot of people know my Uncle George from his pictures that he did of Newmarket's structures around town. He started in 1933 and continued right up to his passing. He would quite often, because of my family circumstances, my father was constantly ill my entire childhood. So he would quite often take his turn babysitting for me. And so I would go off with him. We'd be sitting on the street somewhere in front of a building, and he'd be sketching the building, and he would be keeping an eye on me, explaining the history of the building, which was absolutely captivating, and letting me watch him sketch the buildings. Many of the buildings that I have in my collection of sketches, I can remember back when I was just a little boy standing there watching him create these sketches and these watercolors. So that's one of the reasons why those sketches and watercolors are so dear to me. They take me back to my time with him. He was a mentor to a number of people who were interested in local history. I know that Wes Player and he worked together on sketching. Unfortunately, I have no artistic ability, but for those people who don't know it, Wes is an excellent artist, and he would work with my Uncle George in perfecting his talent as an artist. Of course, Wes also benefited from my Uncle George's, I guess you would call it, zeal for our local history, as did I, and we both became mentees of my Uncle George for local history. Wes and I still kind of chuckle about learning a lot of our history from my Uncle George. As I say, he was an accomplished artist both in pencil and in watercolor. As I said before, he designed the logos for the Newmarket High School, the Newmarket Historical Society, and he was the one that redid the bee's nest logo for the town of Newmarket when he was in grade 9 at high school. So he contributed a lot to Newmarket's history. He did a lot of research for people. One of the things that I really enjoyed after I graduated from high school and started into university was that my Uncle George came up with the idea that we would combine our efforts, and we would do family trees for as many families as we could get to that were situated locally. I still have these genealogies that we did. It was a great opportunity for us to provide genealogies for local families, and it also afforded me the opportunity to learn something about doing research. All of my abilities to do research, and this is basically what I've had to fall back on, not only in my career, but also now when I'm doing these presentations and the articles and such, I got from doing research in cooperation with my Uncle George Loosby. He was a walking encyclopedia on Newmarket history. Next to Terry Carter, I can't think of nobody else who knew as much about our local history, nor was as enthusiastic about our local history. The two of them together, George Loosby and Terry Carter, single-handedly, in my opinion, kept our history alive through a dry period of the 60s and 70s, and one could argue right up to the turn of the century. Terry Carter, of course, writing his books and his articles in the era, and my Uncle George not only writing books, but also doing lectures, and of course his sketches, which I think he's best known for. He and Terry Carter both share the same characteristic. They're both humble men, but are extraordinary influences on the preservation of history here in Newmarket, and I think that for that reason alone, perhaps my Uncle George deserved to be high on the list of nominees. So this is basically an overview of our history, our list of characters of Newmarket. This slide that's up here is to represent the fact that George Loosby was an artist, he was a writer, he was also an engineer. He's probably the closest thing I have met in my life to a real Renaissance man. Um, if you knew my Uncle George, if you ever asked him to do something, if he couldn't do it, he learned how to do it, and he was pretty good at it once he learned how to do it. And to me, that's unique. There are millions of things I can't do. I can think of very few that my Uncle George. So as I said, it's my hope that this presentation encourages each and every person out there to sit down and write a biography of the people who have crossed paths with you in your life, no matter how long it may be, here in the community, and document the people that you believe have made a difference. I hope that you'll visit my History Hound site on Facebook and vote in the poll, giving us an idea of who you think warrants being on the list. You might very well have different people than are listed there, so just simply add them to the list. I'm sure if you know them, there's going to be tons of other people who know them as well, and will appreciate the fact that you brought those people's names back to the memory. I'm hoping that I can publish the new list, the updated list from 2020, so that we can sort of compare notes and see how many people are new to the list and how many people were already named to the list back in 2014 and 2015. As I said back then, I used a forum which I distributed through the town and through the Historical Society, and also through the museum. I decided this time not to distribute a forum, but in fact to do the online poll. At this point, I'm not sure how successful that's going to be. We're a little light in the number of people who have gone to the Facebook page and have voted, so perhaps I should have sent out a paper form, but I decided not to, and I may regret it, but we'll see. This is the form that was sent out back then, giving people the opportunity to nominate people, and as I say, over 560 people did so, which was, I think, pretty good. Gave me a pretty good idea of what the feeling was out in the community about who was valued, who was remembered warmly by those people who were still with us. As in most presentations, I have to give thanks to the people who provided information, particularly those people who provided credits or images. Toronto Star provided some images for me. The Newmarket Archives provided images. I have, as most people know, a large collection of photographs, newspaper clippings, and particularly of drawings, which I call the George Loosby collection, since this is where I got them. And hopefully, when I'm long gone and long forgotten, people will still be able to go through these things. We're always looking, or I'm always thinking, where am I going to find a new home for these archives of mine? So I'll have to keep that in mind. And of course, the various family archives. As I say, we did, meaning Uncle George and I, did, I think, about 80 family trees of local families here in Newmarket, and a lot of the information that we were able to find, I have on my computer, and I quite frequently will go in and take a look at articles or pictures or whatever that we were able to put together back then for the family trees.